Welcome to the AgEmerge podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monte Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. We're excited to welcome Bernie Hansen, the managing member of Better Fed Foods, to the podcast today. This title only scratches the surface of Bernie's incredible work and achievements, from transforming the pre-cooked meats industry and launching prepared entree products for food service, to dedicating years of research to the benefits of essential fatty acids in animal diets. Bernie's work is far-reaching and includes connecting consumers to the farmers that produce their food. Listen in as Bernie and Monte talk about all of this, and the one thing they know for sure, the soil plays a key role in this conversation. There's so much more to unpack, so let's jump right in.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the AgEmerge podcast. Today, I'm joined by Bernie Hansen. Welcome here, Bernie. How are you doing?
Doing real good, Monte. Glad to be here.
Bernie, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe you. One would be serial entrepreneur, founder extraordinaire, but a real interest in all facets of the food system, I would say, is probably a fair way to state that. Did I do good enough there?
You were probably way too nice, but yeah, that were cereal something or another anyway. But I like working with people.
There you go. Well, we had a chance to meet at the Big Soil Health conference a couple of years ago, and I'd just like to have you take a moment and tell us your story, Bernie, and how you got involved in agriculture and where it's led all the way up to Better Fed Foods today.
Well, I'll try to make it short. Born and raised in Kansas, went to Kansas State University, got it specifically in the meat business, had an ag education degree. Never really taught. I was scared of the kids and stuff. And then I made more working in the gas station at night than I would have teaching ag. So I started in the meat business down at Emporia, Kansas, selling meat to grocery stores back when they had butchers in the grocery stores. And so, as you might have noticed, it was probably a long time ago. And but as I got to doing that, I had a locker plant was my last call on Friday night in a little town 30 miles from here called Alma, Kansas. Almost every state has an Alma. I think it was the ladies on the wagon trains and that they honored. And Alma, Kansas had a co-op locker plant. Kind of sounds like I'm talking about today. But anyway, they had ran it for less than a year and it was broke. And an old boy from Kansas State University and one of his students took it over with some locals. And they had been at it for about 8 months and they were in trouble. And so they wanted to hire me because they wanted to start selling restaurants and institutions. And I was probably, and back then, $5 a week made a big difference in a payday. And they offered several of those, $5. And so I went to work for them and started selling restaurants and institutions and developed that. A year later, that old boy decided that he would go to the Kansas City airport one day and take off and never come back. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I made a deal with the banker and the K-State guy that I'd be the manager the next day. And that's how it started, a place called Flint Hills Foods. And that was by then it was 1972. We started building in 73. And never really stopped. And the guy, it wasn't me, the guy from K-State, Dr. Harold Tuma, was very knowledgeable of what was going on in the industry. And a company called Cryovac gave him a sabbatical in New Jersey to look at vacuum packaging meat. And he came back from that sabbatical and he said, I think that's the future. And we had I believe it was the second vacuum packaging machine in the United States. And we started vacuum packaging meats for the restaurant. That was in 1974. We're still putting meat in styrofoam trays in meat cases today. And Monte got a little research farm that way up the road here. And I believe in the ditch that I've got styrofoam that might have been from that same era, and it's still in pretty damn good shape. But anyway, what we found out was that steak and that restaurant, if you got a snowstorm on Friday night and you had the steaks thawed out, you never had to freeze them in the first place, but they would last till next Friday night. And then the surprise was we actually would put 2 to 4 of them in a package. And they started reporting to us that it stopped theft, that the people wouldn't grab a steak and stick it in their coat because the package was yay big. We started adding all that up, and now we're in the 80s. And so what we did was a little old plant in Alma, Kansas. We started buying meat from one packer and doing offal and stuff like that, and hamburger patties and vacuum packaging those. And another one of the packers would buy them from us. And one of them's here and one of them's not anymore, but they started seeing that there was a spot in retail. And we did that during the 80s. And then I couldn't sit still, so I bought a cheese plant, a turkey plant, a sausage plant, the original Doscasel plant, put all those together under Flint Hills Foods, and went around to the grocery stores and started selling retail and building that Flint Hills Foods named up. That industry started changing where, as we see today, consolidation, okay? And we had the ability to cook. We had the ability to vacuum package. One of our customers down at the Lake of the Ozarks, you may have heard of the guy, Kenny Rogers, and it was his operation, but it was ran by another country, a riverboat, and they came to us. It was sailed on the lake, and they came to us and they said, "Can you pre-cook roast beef for us? Because we can't cook on the boat." And we started doing that in the mid '90s, and they came back to us and said that people were buying the ticket to get the pot roast. So in the mid to late '90s, we took that product to the grocery stores that we were selling meat in. They ran us off because they didn't sell cooked meat in a meat case. But then you're probably not old enough to remember the Charmin guy.
Oh, yeah.
We asked the housewife about that, and she said, I really'd like to have that. That's where I met a guy named Bill O'Neill. And he was working for Koch Industries, and we hooked up with them and took that to market, creating what today is known as the ready-to-heat category that never existed. You go in, you buy a package, it's got the pot roast, it may have beef tips and gravy, it may have pork chops in it, but it was the entree. It's microwavable, fresh, ready in 4 minutes. But Mom put together the rest of the meal. And we were arrogant enough to think that we were doing convenience. But when we got to talking to Mom, we were removing guilt, because she'd been going out taking them out to eat McDonald's, whatever, a couple times a week because she's tired. A lot of you guys don't work enough, and so Mom's got to do 2 jobs. She's always got one at home plus the one out there. So we were bringing convenience. Anyway, to shorten the story up, we were in a joint venture with Koch. Koch Industries decided to get out of the beef business. Some of your viewers would be old enough to remember when they got in it. They got out, okay, and that company was called Concept Foods, and was a piece of Flint Hills Foods. I bought that back. The Koch folks were very nice and let us buy it back and stuff. And one of the many times starving to death and stuff, but always had a lot of meat. And then one day, a company you've probably heard of called Hormel, who's pretty doggone good at understanding the consumer. And they saw this selling in Hy-Vee stores at a high rate. They came, and we ended up doing this is in the 2000, late 1998, 99 and stuff. And we ended up selling that to Hormel. Bill and I split up. Bill O'Neill didn't go with Hormel. He went on to develop the convenience ready to heat package with a lot of other companies and put pre-cooked hamburger patties into grocery stores. You know the world's changing when somebody's got to cook your burger. Okay. So think about that. That's in the 2000s. Okay. Here, move forward to where we're at today and stuff. And so, and the other thing was people were really starting to look at the meat industry in a negative way because we didn't stand up and tell our story and defend our, that's cowboys. Okay. And as they did that, somebody else told her story for us. And when they tell it, it's not near as cool as when we tell it, you know? And so we started losing percentage of income, percentage of volume. Still looks good volume, but actually the eating times per week was going down, okay? As that happened, it looked to me like that we had to start talking about the soil. And so I sold out to Hormel in 2005, got into some other ventures in the meat, and then started looking at the soil and started looking at the feed industry and the omegas. And that was because of Dr. Jim Drouillard at Kansas State University and the effects of the essential fatty acids on the animals, and got really involved in that and saw it really changing the animals' lives. And then we realized, you know, we really got to talk about the soil and stuff. The consumer cares about the soil. They don't want to hear about, you know, it's not, but if you listen to the news, whatever, 30 people get shot in Chicago every night or whatever. Nobody seems to give a shit. But if you talk about killing an animal for your health and the satisfaction of yourself and your kids and stuff, you shouldn't talk about that. So Bill and I came back together and started doing soil and stuff. I started before we came back together, looking at the soils and working on that with biology. And the way I did that was by starting growing algae in 2011 for the feed and then later for the soil. And that's how we got Better Fed Foods today and AgWise working together. So it's a long story, still the same story. So what we're doing today is education, a lot of education and reconnecting. As you go to many things that you go, Monte, I was years ago in Kansas City and the speaker asked for the people that had ever lived on a farm. Boy, there wasn't many of us. And then how many have relatives that live on a farm? There really wasn't very many of them. When he got done, it was a very large amount that were 2 to 3 generations away from their food. And I contend that COVID, as horrible as it was, is tremendous as to where we're going because it woke people up and stuff. So, but that's how we got here, and man, is it happening.
Well, one of the things I think interesting, the conversations we had is we were talking about that omega-3/6 ratio, and you know, I'm a grass-fed producer, and all of the costs that a lot of us grass-fed direct-to-consumer producers have. You know, first off, we have lack of scale, you know, and we don't have thousands of head of fat cattle, you know, typically finishing a year per farm. We don't have. We go to a processor and it costs us $1,000 a head to get processed, right? Versus, I think one of the stats I saw is at one of the big four, it's $160 a head plus.
Yeah.
Plus they sell all of the, you know, everything. You know, what's to say everything but eyeballs and something else. But you know, they sell
those.
every last thing, and
they sell those too. Yeah.
Right, and you just don't have that when you go to a small scale because a JBS can send out a semi load of eyeballs a day, and they can send out a semi load of spleen or whatever, where, the small or the mid-sized packer that's maybe doing 50 head a day, which is pretty good for a regional packer, they never get that close on the offal to offset those costs, right? So there's just inherent problems there. So you said, hey, why don't we work within the context of the current system and make it, my agronomic term, make it gooder, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, there you go. There you go. I
how
like
can
that.
you take what's currently being done and just add a little bit to it, and it's one thing if you're a farmer and you have 1,000 acres and you do it absolutely perfect 100% of the way, you're still only impacted 1,000 acres. But I've always said, if I can consult on millions of acres and make it 10% better, I'll make it far better than if I just tried to do my own farm. So talk to us about your philosophy there, and how you're trying to insert, the feed efficiency and the identity preservation and those kind of things within the current production model.
Yeah, yeah, really good point. Okay, so as we looked at this, and Bill O'Neill is the ultimate retail connection. Okay, they respect his knowledge of the industry and his foresight in the industry. Okay, as I didn't probably do a very good job, but what I was trying to illustrate is that disconnect from the. My understanding is during COVID, Davos or COP 27, 28, somebody in another country hit the table and says, because of the methane talk and the cow being the bad lady and all that, hit the table and says, why don't we just get rid of them because we got plenty of food? And so that's pretty startling.
Well, obviously, in the Flint Hills, you can just start plowing that, right? And farm tofu on the Flint Hills.
Yeah, because right up at the research farm where we're regenerating that thing, we've got every bit of 2 inches of soil.
See, that's the problem people don't understand about cows and ruminants, is that they may take lots of acres, when you look at the map of how many acres they take, but they're taking acres that can be done, that you can't farm agriculturally. You can't, it's not arable land for plowing and tilling and seeding.
No. And they just love to talk about a digester that creates energy. Well, God did quite a deal there with the cow. She's that grass. And I had a guy in Mexico tell me, he said, I'm going to buy your products. Answer one question. How's the cow eat the green grass and make white milk? I said, I'll see you later. And he said, there you go. You got no answer. Back to your question. Okay. So what we saw was that disengaging of the public with the meat deal. And we put small plants all over the country out of business with regulations. So when COVID hit, there wasn't any place, you could, it took 2 years to get a kill date and stuff. You had 700 producers going out of business a month because they couldn't even get enough out of the calf to pay for the feed for mom for the whole year. And I heard it in Virginia. I heard it all over the country and stuff on it. And so one, we started helping those small plants. Two, we help people through people that we know do a better job getting more of them in and stuff. But then, like you said, people don't know where to get the grass fed. They don't know where. Organic's a pretty small segment. Grass fed's a large segment, but people, when they understand that story, they like that. We bring some of those with the omegas. We bring that lowering of the 6:3 ratio, the essential fatty acids, and we bring the omegas up. What we've proven is that actually has a lot to do with that animal's life. Their sustainability has a lot to do with that. And, today we see huge animals, and a fair number of them die late in life because they're just overweight, a lot of heat index and stuff on it. So as we measure and document that stuff, a lot of it's education. but it helps bring that story to the consumer, and that's one of the things we work hard to do around the country. I've been on South Dakota last week, feed yard, Western Kansas, been in Texas, actually went to the Bitcoin conference, which seems a bit different, but connected with a lot of beef people.
Hey everyone, Kim Sheese here from the AgEmerge podcast.
And I'm Liz Haney from Soil Regen.
Are you ready to immerse yourself in the future of soil health? Don't miss your chance to register for the 2024 Big Soil Health event happening December 9th through the 11th in Cedar Falls, Iowa, hosted by Soil Regen.
We're all about farmer-first education, training, and networking to boost soil health, improve your quality of life, and maximize your ROI. After the event, we'll stick with you every step of the way through our consulting and community support.
Don't wait. Join us for inspiring speakers and an incredible community of attendees that'll keep you learning and growing. Head on over to www.agsoilregen.com/events to register now.
We can't wait to see you there.
So we were talking a little bit about where that industry is going and pounds per animal and those kind of things. How does that affect, sustainability and regenerative? Because, I mean, one of the things we look at is when you're in a grass-fed program or something, you cannot get the carcass too big, because if it gets big, your maintenance energy requirement is so high, you can't eat enough grass to maintain and gain. So, we have to finish at about 1,200 pound.
Yep.
With a finished animal, not just animal grew up to 1,200 and couldn't grow anymore. You need to have a frame size that's such that it has fat layer on it and is finished at 1,200. Where you were just telling me 1,000-pound carcasses.
Yeah. They don't discount a carcass at 1,100 pounds anymore, which is about the weight of your animal. So
Right.
So I didn't do all that good at Kansas State University, but I've spent the last 20 years working with a gentleman there. His name's Dr. Jim Drillyard, and I believe he's still working, but he'll be the father of essential fatty acids, which is what grass-fed's very good at, because it's in the grass. They got them in their body and they're balanced. Okay. What we've found out with some of the products that we work with, there's some others out there, is that when you bring those especially longer chain fatty acids, that's the EPA, the DHA, versus like in grass is more the 18-3s and stuff, the omega-3s, okay? What's happened in the industry is these animals got bigger, a lot more distiller's grain, a lot more corn. So ideally in a grass-fed, you're going to see a 6-3 ratio of about 4/6 to 1/3, okay? The best claimed diet in the world is the Mediterranean diet. They poo-poo red meat because they do salmon and minimize meat, okay? But around the world, the Mediterranean diet. What we do, what grass-fed should get credit for, is it actually fits into the Mediterranean diet, okay? You'll have omega-3s in there and stuff. When we have our own lab, we've ran over 10,000 6-3 ratios on meat, milk, and eggs and feed. Closer to 20,000 when you count the blood serum and the other stuff that we do. We see omega-6-3 ratios as high as 40-1. If you went to the medical doctor and they ran your blood test, they probably cremate you. It costs too much to bury you now, but probably just cremate you, because you ain't going to be around, okay? They call it in the beef industry the high altitude disease. And there's a pap test they run, genetically exposed. If they're in a high altitude, they got too high of paps, they come off the mountain, they go to Texas to where they can be at no altitude. What we've seen is it's actually vasodilation. that a grass-fed animal does very good at because they got elasticity of cell structure. And so that animal, we believe with our technology, one is we can help the grass-fed put some more weight on at an economical level, okay? Like you said, it costs $1,000. We'd like to see these plants ramp up a little bit and get that cost down. That's a lot of money. And like you said, the deficit is multiple because the cost per head and the big folks got credit back, and the little guy has another cost of getting rid of the offal and stuff, and which is part of that $1,000. So we believe we can help grass fed. We know we can help the bigger animals. We see it all the time. We ran a 700 head test at Kansas State University without our product and testing. 7 of them died in the heat, and with it 2 of them died of, you always have some death loss and stuff, but that's really creeped up there anymore. So they might be good in a big plant from the pounds per day, but not for the animal and not for the cuts. Somewhere in between there, probably a nice balance and stuff. So we lower that 6:3 ratio, and which grass fed, we believe we've seen more gain and more productivity, which is sustainability.
Right.
Right.
Well, one of the things that really contributes to some of those things, and you mentioned, is the DDG feeding that we've done. While it's a very economical source, there's a lot of inflammation and other related issues that come in the omega-6 production coming out of the DDGs. So I think that's going to catch up to us eventually, don't you?
Oh, it is. And we work in quite a number of states, primarily with cow-calf and getting more into the feed thing yard. But this is really interesting. What we've seen is that, and we've been doing data gathering for multiple years, but seriously for the last 3 generations of calving at several sites. Got a call here a few weeks ago from a medical doctor who's an Angus producer too, generational Angus producer. And he said, Bernie, he said, I wanted to call one of my friends that's using the same program. And that can be multiple products, okay, and stuff. But he said, my calves are as heavy as they were when I sold them last year, and I'm 2 months away. And I'm seeing generational changes. Up the road here, I mentioned we've got a research farm. We put 240 chickens there. We imitate Kansas State University when they did our original research for us. When you change that omega-6/3 level and stuff, during COVID, we couldn't get chickens, and stuff on it. And so we had to keep chickens layers 102 weeks. They were still laying in the high 90s, never had a drop of antibiotics, had a lot of love. Because my daughter-in-law is from Peru, and she's got a master's in poultry. We just ran a test up there 70 weeks, and we boosted them again with the biology, and they were still laying 94% versus 89 would be considered good in the industry. They went back to 99%. We sold them to farmers for $5 a piece because they said them birds are better than the ones they buy at Tractor Supply. So in the distillers, see, I'm not after, because I know it's done a lot for the deal, but I was witnessing a test here a couple of weeks ago. Fish oil had a ratio of 1:3 to 1. The slice of beef they had was out of the meat case was 25 to 1. And we always thought you are what you eat, but actually we are what they ate. We need to go back a step. So what we can do is counter and lower that 6:3 ratio, and we've seen nothing. But it doesn't matter whether it's meat, milk, or eggs. It's biological, which you've worked with for years, works in the soil, works in humans, works in the animal.
So I love how we've come to those connections and how that works. So, continuing to see that connection between the soil and the plant and the animal and the person. You are what you eat, or what you ate eats, and what it ate eats.
Right.
So,
Right.
It's a matter of where do you stop? It goes all the way back to the microbe. But a little bit, talk to us about how we've had Transparency Wise on the podcast before, and that was blockchain for basically tracking everything related to an animal. Kind of taking that concept now and backing up to what the animal ate, correct? And understanding that as part of integrating all this into the food that we eat. Talk to us about that and the AgWise product, and how that came to be, and what you're building there and what that's looking like.
You bet. And we still work, and so fortunately, and Bill and I'd stayed in contact. And during COVID, he and Sarah came up with this wonderful idea to use QR code to tell customers about the product that they were buying and stuff on it. And that was before COVID. And then COVID hit, and everything kind of went dilemma. Okay. And where that came from, Bill is the ultimate consumer representative. He takes what they have shown him in purchasing power back to packers and through retailers, from retailers, and say, hey, what about us? What about us? We're the consumer. What the hell happened here? What happened to our message? We actually have been told when they turned the food pyramid upside down. Think about that. Probably another podcast. Okay, so the world changed. Okay, it took time, but it changed. Okay, so the consumer's saying, "What's the truth? I'd like to have a ribeye steak about the size of a grass-fed, 1 inch thick. That's about what I think I'd like to have. But the one in the store is like this big and takes last week's paycheck to get it." So a lot of disconnect. So Bill says, I don't think the message is getting back to the meat industry about what the consumer really thinks. And so the whole concept of Transparency Wise was to tell a story on the package of who had this, what they did for the consumer and stuff. And the realization was, I'm located in Wamego, Kansas, 100 miles to the west of Kansas City, where most of the people are at. Okay, 200 miles this way is quite a few cattle being fed in western Kansas. The people in western Kansas don't know what the people in Kansas City are thinking when they buy the steak at Hy-Vee, Dillon's, or Walmart, okay? And those people don't know what they did. And then even worse than that, in between there lies, and Kansas City's involved in it, the Flint Hills, some of the best grassland in the United States. They ain't got a clue that the cow actually had the calf that started there and stuff. So that was telling the story. It's worked good, okay? But as we started looking at the soil, well, we met you at a soil show. And Bill and I went to a number of soil shows, Sarah to some, and some of our associates and stuff. We started learning about the biology in the soil and stuff. And Bill goes, man, wouldn't it be better if we told that? Not better, it'd be more better if we told that story too, about what they ate and stuff on it. And so they came up with AgWise, and AgWise is total technology company, same parent, but total technology company that's leading to the digitization and Russell Hedrick, Liz Haney, and them are highly involved in that. And so what happens there is AgWise works with the labs that are testing the soil, but it can be the feed, okay, and upload that information into a platform and stuff on it, which is that's the producer's information, okay? It's not being sold, okay? Then Russell Hedrick, who's a well-known, soils firefighter turned farmer, but knows his stuff, he's doing foliar scripts. So you can take an AgWise report of your soil test and move that over, and it will tell you how to adjust your fertilizer levels, what amount of a biological to put in, and shows you what you'll save by doing that. The tremendous response, because what we learned was, Monte, going to those shows was that, and I don't know the percentage, but it's pretty high of the producers. I'm talking about soil producers. If they got a Haney or a Biomakers or more advanced than the very basics, they really may not have known how to use it and what that said and what credit to give to a biological. Very, very confused, and we were confused, Monte. We'd go to a soil show and we'd see 90 booths, and we were having trouble in our mind. How do we get this message out there? And so they're working with the lab companies, uploading data, working with the customers under AgWise. That's the beginning step. And they'll work for anybody, but in Better Fed Foods, that's the beginning step. Get the land in, get the data. That's better for the land part. Goes over, get the animal in the program. Take that data, take your animal. Let's show the consumer that we've got a lot of customers. I'm just putting this in as a side note, okay? We got a lot of customers in Montana. Apparently it gets cold up there. It's hot outside here, but one day it's hard to imagine with global warming. So one day I call one of our customers up there way north, okay? And he answers the phone, and I knew they'd had some snow, a few feet of it actually, and it was just noisier than hell. And his name's Tony. I won't give out his location or his social security number. They already stole that. But anyway, I said, what the hell, Tony, is going on? You having a party? This is 7:30 in the morning. He said, no, Bernie. He said, it's crowded as hell in here. He said, we've got 16 calves in our living room. And I said, and I was raised on a farm. We didn't have a lot of cow calf and stuff. I said, and I knew he and his wife had just built a new home. I said, you got them in the living room? He said, yeah, what the hell do you think? That's how we make our living. See, I tell that story, and they'll spend, I wouldn't know how many $100 on their dog. And they'll always buy omegas for their dog. But they're amazed when to find out that somebody would have 16. One person says, well, that could have ruined the carpet. So actually, they bought the carpet. So there's a total disconnect. So that's what Bill and Sarah are doing. Building, no pun intended, grassroots. That we realized we had to start there. And man, is it taken off. They're up at Iowa today, Farm Progress. I think that's what it's called, and stuff on it. But then the big news is Bill's telling that story to the retailer. Hey, these folks are serious. You wanted regenerative, you wanted sustainable. Here it is. Show them some love. Show them some love. And we can document that all the way through. And we've got folks talking to us about how do we pay for that, and they'll do it.
So how do you see that technology then or technology like that really changing how food is grown in the future? What is that going to lead to?
So Russell's going to have to invent the 72-hour day, because every time Bill turns around, he's got some other product, some other crop that he wants a script for, and other countries saying, wait a minute, we want some of that. And so that starts that education, okay, that they can go back and stuff. We believe that it's an educator for the producer that, hey, this biology thing's real. I give a talk one day, a little short talk. We have a little office and down there in Overland Park where all them people are at. And one of our customers feeds a few head of cattle every year, just a few miles from there in Overland Park. Now he don't. He's got a little place there where they had a horse, and he keeps a few. Well, they're Angus, they're red Angus, but hey, we're diversified, okay? But around the corner, 2 miles, that house popped up for sale, and it was 13.8 million. Now the producer, he's retired, he didn't nothing like that. But the point is, we could show the people in Overland Park, they actually got animal. They were killed there in Kansas City, and some of them ate the meat and goes, holy mackerel. But our open house, they usually have about, for the chamber, they usually have about 19 people to 25 as a courtesy to welcome to town. We had 79. We had a House of Representative person there, because we were in a consumer-based metropolitan area that had really kind of lost touch with agriculture. And my opening comments was, nobody wants their kids on fentanyl. So why don't we get off the chemistry and on the biology? And so our goal there is to help teach that, Monte.
So it comes down to trust, I believe. And originally trust was transferred because you were, whatever, 100 some years ago, you were buying from your neighbor the animal, or you were raising the animal yourself. You were getting it butchered in town, because every little town had at least one butcher, if not multiple, right?
Yep.
Then we went and we just transitioned, and the trust started to be labels, right? And label claims. And what's happened over time is we've gotten larger and larger and more disconnected, like you said, through the generations. The package isn't big enough. So you should have made these cryovac packages bigger that you guys came up with, because now there's so many claims on these packages. The package has to be bigger than the steak to fit them all. And some of the research we've ran across at one time, and this is old, 10 years ago, 52% of people did not believe what was on the label 10 years ago. And I cannot imagine that being higher today. I imagine it has gotten worse.
Yes.
So what you're saying is, okay, we're hitting the reset button. And rather than the trust coming from, we're getting it back closer to knowing the person, knowing the neighbor, by just populating everything and using the IBM blockchain, food blockchain, to transfer that to where we've got that value of that product. We know what's happened. And so we've got that trust. Now, my question for you is, how do we get an AI engine that says, you know what, Bernie, I want to make sure my steak's from Kansas, because, man, I love Kansas and I'm all about Kansas, and that's what's most important to me. And somebody else says, well, I want one that was not transported a lot, was, humanely treated, whatever. Another person maybe wants grass-fed or a certain nutrient profile. How do we get it then, where once this blockchain's populated, I can set up my preferences, you set up your preferences, and then it automatically pairs you with that food?
That calls at 6 o'clock tonight.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We're
No.
going to pause the podcast right now, and at 7:30 we're going to re-record and see what you came up with. But you see what I'm saying? Okay, so you've created we've gotten rid of the BS and labels. okay, and gotten a thing. But still, the consumer doesn't really know what that means that, okay, this calf hit the ground on April 6th. You know, you got all this data that still don't mean anything to them. How do we translate that into something
Yeah.
that means something? And secondly, matches what they want, because they may want to spend $10 for a steak and they don't care if it's, some sort of Spanish breed from Mexico that tastes like leather. Okay. And another person may want, a corn-fed experience that's awesome out of a purebred Angus. Somebody else may want a grass-fed, but don't know how to find that. How do we get that paired? So that's the next two,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So back to your beginning, trust but verify. Okay. So we start with the land, we go to the animal stuff, and then the next steps are exactly and actually Bill and Sarah are up there in Iowa introducing a next level AgWise platform that is very much directed at tracing, identifying, and that, and the call I actually had this evening with a group of producers is exactly what you're talking about. They'll talk about tonight, know your farmer, and that's a link up of what you said, because I see that in every, when I was in South Dakota last week, a lot of beautiful beans and corn and land and grass and cattle. Okay. For some reason, those people were telling me it was the best in the country. But I was in Texas a few weeks ago, and there was 400 producers there, and a couple of those guys, I told them we got the agriculture award at the Texas Independent Cattlemen for our vision and thinking. And when I accepted it, I said, I got to tell you, there was 400 producers there. There's 500 and some people. And I said, I got to tell you, meat killed my granddad. It didn't go well, Monte. And I said, well, wait. I said, he was 97. It was a slow death. And then they loosened up a little bit. And then I said, wait, who knows how long he would have lived if it wasn't for the whiskey and women. That's what you're talking about. Okay. They didn't get to meet Granddad Hess, who still at 95 combed the hair before he went to the door in case the lady was there, and the neighbor lady and stuff. But he ate meat, and it did, goat milk, all that stuff. What you're saying is how do we get that message that somebody in Illinois that has grass fed, there's consumers out there want that. We aren't there yet, but that's part of what AgWise Transparency is talking about. Know your producer and stuff on it. There is 100%. Well, I don't want to name names, but Whole Foods kind of paid the coin is whole paycheck. They kind of proved that the consumer would pay for what they perceive to be something very special. I mentioned earlier and stuff, when they invented this thing, it kind of messed things up, because them darn kids, my grandkids, and sit there and they go, Gramps, that ain't what this is. Why is my mower missing out? It tells me anyway that we're not there yet, but that's where AgWise, Transparency Wise believes that we can go, because there's every reason for us to believe we know that products like that have an absolute home. Those small plants that are opening back up, they were backed up 2 years. They're not now due to the high prices and stuff and the inflation and all of that. We need to keep them full so they're viable. Those jobs are local. The producer's got a place to go. And that's a really important part. I think that I don't know if this is possible, but it really seems to me, Monte, that the big packers and the fact of life, that's what we've got. They kind of forgot that those animals came from the producers. And we call it at Better Fed Foods the other bit.
And they've demonstrated that they forgot what their customers want, because that's what you and Bill came up with. And constantly, innovated the packaging, the pre-cooked meat. Who would ever thought that somebody would want a pre-cooked hamburger patty that you said earlier on? I mean, that kind of blew my mind. If you can't figure that out, boy, there is a
Yeah.
problem. But to wrap up, talk to our farmers. What do you think some of the things that you wish farmers better understood about the food value chain?
That they're actually, and that's an easy one, okay? Because I don't know how many instances, Bill and I've been at a soil show or in meetings or at dinner and stuff, talking to grass-fed uh, uh, producers, grassroots producers. Okay, the cow and the calf start the whole thing, mom and dad and the kids. Okay, which kind of goes back to the whole problem we got here in the country. But anyway, they just, one is they've lost contact. It's both ways. They think, well, I'll haul it down the road, I'm done with it and everything. And the consumer that wants to let loose of more money for what they want, they actually want to know who they are, what they are. They don't need name. They stole your social security number a couple of weeks ago of everybody in the world. So that's passe now. But they really, and they don't need the name. They don't need the name. But they want to know, is it grass-fed? Is it, whatever the story is and stuff on it. So the acknowledgement that, hey, this is important to them. And when I tell that story about old Tony and them calves, they just can't get over that, and stuff that they would have those calves in the living room. That's a big deal, And the other thing that is so with the producer and the consumer, I'm sorry, they got no idea that cow has to be milked in a dairy on Sunday. They go, what do you mean? 7 days west of the cow ain't very good at reading the counter. She's eating and producing and she loves it. And she'd like to have the milk taken out. So that's where that comes from. We've worked with a retailer up in Pennsylvania, and we explained that whole milk that killed my granddad wasn't pasteurized or anything, but what killed him and stuff came from a cow, and they didn't take the fat out of it. And what's happened in that little retailer is we've got comments. We did that with a transparency-wise video telling the story, and their customers have gone from skim and 1% back to 2%, and whole milk happily gone back and said, we didn't think it was okay for us to drink that. Isn't that a shock?
Yeah, if you want white water, drink skim. So
there you go.
I would say the other thing, the milk that killed your dad, it wasn't 3.25 or 3.5% whole milk. I mean, you think about how we do whole milk now. Well, we're doing more and more jerseys because we get the milk fat out of it, and we're taking 2 or 3% of the fat out in order to hit the 3.5 milk fat standard.
Right.
But we create that extra fat to send over to butter and
right.
products that we can make out of the fat portion of the solids.
Yeah.
And so we just monkey with stuff a lot, don't we?
We really do.
We really think we're God, and that job was taken.
Yeah, 100%. And he's really good at it, and we're horrible at it. And so that's why we do this. And I don't think I explained it very well, but that we work with the consumer to know where their producers at and what they do for them, and then the producer to say, hey, you are involved. It actually does affect you, and you don't just drop them off at the sale and without the rest of the story and expect to get that other bid and
right.
stuff.
You can do it that way. You can do it the way you've always done, and you're going to do just as good as everybody else. But if you'd like to do a little bit better,
yep,
you'd like to have a little nicer vacation, or a little nicer carpet for the calves next time when they come to the living room, right?
That's
right. Get a little closer to your consumer and understand what they want, and build around that.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. And we see it on both sides, and we're linking some people and we're really excited. I mean, the consumer is ready and willing. And I tell you what Bill's done. He's got the retailer. They're real leery. They're real leery. You know, everybody struggled with COVID, and then there's been some things in the industries that, you know, maybe were presented that weren't quite correct, I would say. Okay. And they're really leery. Okay. But the progress is they're going, wait a minute. And that 6:3 ratio is a big deal, big deal, big deal. And that's something that they can talk about that, well, consumers, I leave town yesterday at 5:30 to go to a feed yard, and over in Manhattan, they got a gym thing, you know, one of them workout things and stuff. There was more people at that thing at 5:30 in the morning than I've seen at the mall for 10 years. That tell you something.
As long as they don't have an escalator going up the steps to get in there, that's
yeah.
all right, sir. Well, Bernie, I wish you had fun doing what you do. I can tell you really struggle to have fun on your day-to-day activities.
Yes.
I hope you can hang in there, and I hope meat and milk don't kill you too. You know, well, they probably will eventually, right?
It will. I think it will. I think it will, and the wife will, if nothing else.
Well, that can be deserved sometimes, you know. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us today and what you've got going on there, and just a little better understanding of, you know, where we've come from in the whole food industry, and it continues to change, right? And technology is going to allow us to connect farmer to the consumer much more efficiently. We can stand behind our claims instead of trying to meet the problem with the current claims today is it's a minimum that you must meet. Okay. It's not what I did. It's just, I'm doing just enough. It's like a pass fail class, right? You do just enough to pass versus you're introducing a letter grade system to where if you have an A+ producer, you know, an A+ person passes just as well as a D person passes, right? But there's a lot of difference between A+ and D-.
Yep.
So I think then that opportunity there is for the value to come back to the farmer.
Yep. I just, you know, we got grades of beef. Why don't we have grades of food security? What premiums they're willing to pay for, add it right into the system that's there today. Makes things simple. AgWise is Transparency-Wise is working on that. We work with the producers, and you're just absolutely right. And that's why we call it better fed foods, better land, better animal, better human. And there's a lot of us working in the category, and we see real interest. So we appreciate what you do, getting the message out there.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks again, Bernie. You have a wonderful week next week on your travels, and we'll be talking to you again.
All right. Thanks, Monte. Appreciate it. You bet.
What a great conversation in history, exploring the incredible work Bernie is doing to connect the dots between better fed land, animals, and people. From his transformative contributions to the food industry to his dedication to improving animal health and soil regeneration, we hope that you found this conversation inspiring and insightful. So be sure to subscribe to the AgEmerge podcast so you don't miss out on any of our great guest conversations. And as always, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing to connect the dots of effective system practices, check out our website at asn.farm. And there you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn. Thanks for listening.